All right, so we're going to dive into a topic today that's probably a lot more complex than you might think at first glance.
Definitely more to it than meets the eye.
Yeah. We're going to be exploring the evolution of animal agriculture.
Okay, so from the very beginning.
From its very humble beginnings to the honestly mind-blowing possibilities of biotechnology.
The future of food, essentially.
Exactly. And we've got a ton of research for this deep dive. We've got historical accounts,
News articles.
scientific papers.
Yeah. Even economic projections.
Trying to really paint a full picture of how we even got to this point.
Exactly, yeah. And where we might be headed, which is
The question.
a big question, yeah. And it's fascinating to me how this, seemingly simple image, like a cow in a field.
That classic pastoral scene.
Right. How
Yeah.
that's actually connected to some of the biggest challenges facing our planet.
More than people realize.
Yeah, way more. We're not just talking about farming. I mean, this is about,
Global impact,
land use,
climate change,
even pandemics.
even pandemics. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's rewind a bit.
Back to the beginning.
Yeah. So our sources suggest that our relationship with domesticated animals goes back like over 10,000 years.
At least,
Yeah.
maybe even further. But
Yeah.
that's when we really start to see the evidence.
Right.
It's remarkable when you think about it. Like, without domestication, who knows where humanity would even be right now?
It's true.
It provided early humans with a reliable source of food, of course, muscle power for farming.
Oh, yeah. For plowing and stuff.
Exactly. And materials, right? For clothing and tools.
So much stuff came from those early animals.
Yeah, it was crucial for the development of civilization itself.
I mean, so basically, are we saying no cows, no iPhones?
Kinda, yeah.
That's a thought, huh?
But our sources also paint this picture of how that idyllic vision of farming, like the old McDonald kind of,
Yeah.
has transformed into something vastly different.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's really where the big issues start to arise.
Right. So would you say the rise of industrial animal agriculture in like the 20th century, would you say that's kind of
Completely changed the game.
changed the game?
Okay. Yeah, we saw the introduction of specialized breeds, factory-like conditions,
Wow.
and heavy reliance on things like antibiotics and hormones, all to maximize output
To just pump out as much
as possible, as efficiently as possible.
product as possible.
Yeah.
Wow. And the scale of this industry, I mean, it's mind-boggling. Our sources indicate that over 73 billion,
With a B.
with a B, billion land animals are slaughtered annually,
Every year.
every year,
Yeah.
to meet global meat demand.
And that number's only going up.
Oh, yeah.
As developing nations become wealthier, their populations demand more meat. It's a trend we see across the board.
So it's a system that's good at, well, it's very efficient at producing these vast quantities of food, but
What cost?
at what cost? Right. That's what our sources keep coming back to. It's not a simple equation.
No, it's not. So let's unpack some of those hidden costs.
Yeah.
Like, what are the downsides of this industrial approach to animal agriculture?
Well, I mean, for starters, the environmental impact is massive.
I would imagine.
Livestock farming alone accounts for nearly 15% of global greenhouse gas emissions.
Seriously.
That's more than the entire transportation sector.
Wow. I had no idea it was that significant.
It's a huge contributor and often overlooked.
Wow. What else should we be concerned about?
Well, think about land use, right? A staggering 37.5% of the Earth's habitable land is used for livestock production.
That's almost 40%. That's crazy.
It is. That's land that could be used for growing crops, for reforestation,
Oh, yeah.
or just for preserving natural habitats.
Right.
And then there's the issue of water consumption.
Yeah, how could I forget water?
Animal agriculture consumes about a fifth of the world's freshwater resources.
So it's a system that's putting a tremendous strain on our planet's resources.
Absolutely. There's no way around it. What are the implications of that for like our future?
Well, it's contributing to deforestation, biodiversity loss, and climate change.
Okay, so all the big ones.
All the big ones.
Yeah.
And it's exacerbating water scarcity in many regions of the world.
Right.
These are all interconnected challenges that have far-reaching consequences for humans and, for ecosystems alike.
It's a pretty sobering picture. But our sources don't just focus on the problems, they also explore some potential solutions, which is good.
It's not all doom and gloom.
No, exactly. So one obvious solution, right, is to just eat less meat.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Cut down on the demand.
Right, yeah.
And our sources indicate that if everyone in the developed world reduced their meat consumption to the levels recommended by health organizations,
Yeah.
it would have a significant positive impact on the environment, our health.
So there's personal benefits too.
Absolutely. Less heart disease, less obesity. It's a win-win.
Okay, so reducing our meat intake is one piece of the puzzle for sure. But what about like protecting the ecosystems that are already under threat from all this?
That's key too. Can't just focus on reducing harm. Got to protect what we have left.
Oh, right, yeah. Our sources introduce us to Enric Sala and his work on ocean conservation.
Oh, yeah. Sala's great. Specifically, his work on the 30 by 30 movement.
Yeah, the 30 by 30 movement.
Which is really fascinating because it highlights just how interconnected everything is.
Okay.
He argues that protecting 30% of the Earth's land and ocean by 2030
Ambitious.
is essential for preserving biodiversity and ensuring the health of the planet. And he uses this compelling example from the ocean to illustrate his point, the case of whales.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about the whales.
So Sala's research shows that whales are not just majestic creatures, right?
Yeah.
They're actually ecosystem engineers.
What does that even mean?
Their poop.
They're what?
Their poop, believe it or not, is incredibly rich in iron, which is a vital nutrient for phytoplankton. You know, those tiny plants that form the base of the marine food web.
Right, okay.
So whale poop is good for the environment.
Wait, whale poop is good for the environment. That's a new one.
It is. And it gets even more interesting. When whales dive deep to feed, they bring those nutrients up to the surface.
Oh, okay.
So it's like they're fertilizing the ocean.
Yeah.
And that supports the entire food chain. But industrial whaling, back in the day,
Yeah.
decimated whale populations, disrupted this delicate balance. And that had cascading effects on the whole ecosystem.
So protecting whales has like a ripple effect
Exactly.
that benefits the whole ocean, and that applies to land-based ecosystems as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, so protecting a certain portion of land could have those positive impacts.
Far beyond its boundaries.
Far beyond. Okay, I like that. So we've got reducing meat consumption, protecting ecosystems.
Yeah.
Those are like two key
Just
strategies.
big pieces of the plan.
But our sources also point to another solution that's potentially more controversial.
This is where things get really interesting.
Yeah, biotechnology.
The great unknown.
Right. We're talking CRISPR, gene editing, all that mind-blowing stuff.
Stuff of science fiction becoming reality.
Yeah. And it's being applied to animal agriculture.
In ways we're only just beginning to understand.
Right. So biotechnology offers this range of possibilities from, improving the efficiency of animal production to maybe even reducing its environmental impact.
Huge potential upside.
Right.
But also raises a lot of ethical questions.
Right. About how far we should go in manipulating nature.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah, okay, this is where things get really interesting. So let's explore some of those biotechnological innovations, and then we can, we can grapple with some of the ethical dilemmas they present.
Sounds like a plan.
What are some of the, most promising but also potentially unsettling applications of biotechnology in the realm of animal agriculture?
Well, one area that's getting a lot of attention is gene editing,
I was going to say gene editing.
specifically using CRISPR technology
Yeah,
to modify the genomes of livestock.
okay.
Scientists are exploring ways to make animals more resistant to diseases, improve their feed efficiency,
So they eat less but produce more.
exactly, and even reduce the environmental impact of their waste.
So less methane from cows, that kind of thing.
That's the idea.
That's pretty incredible. So we're talking about engineering animals that are healthier, more productive,
And more environmentally friendly.
and more environmentally friendly. I mean, what's not to love?
Well, some critics would say we're playing God by manipulating the genetic code of living creatures.
Oh, yeah, I could see that.
They worry about the potential for unintended consequences, both for the animals themselves and for the ecosystems they inhabit.
Yeah, there are always those unintended consequences.
It's hard to predict how these changes will play out on the long run.
Right. What are some, specific examples of gene editing in action? Are there things already happening?
Absolutely. One prominent example is the Aqua Advantage salmon,
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
which was genetically engineered to grow faster than conventional salmon.
Really?
It's the first genetically modified animal approved for human consumption in the United States.
Wow.
And it sparked a lot of debate about the safety and ethics of GMOs.
Frankenfish, some people call it. But if it can be farmed more sustainably, isn't that a good thing?
That's the argument that developers make. They say Aqua Advantage salmon require less feed can be raised in land-based facilities,
Okay.
which reduces the environmental impact of salmon farming. But opponents argue that we don't fully understand the long-term consequences of releasing genetically modified organisms into the environment.
I can see that.
They worry about potential impacts on wild salmon populations, the health of the ecosystem as a whole.
Yeah, those are valid concerns.
It's a tough call.
It sounds like a classic case of weighing potential benefits against the potential risks.
Exactly. And who gets to decide what risks are acceptable?
That's a whole other issue, right?
Exactly.
What other examples of gene editing in livestock are out there?
Well, there's the EnviroPig,
The EnviroPig.
genetically engineered to produce less phosphorus in its manure.
Okay.
Excess phosphorus from livestock waste is a major pollutant.
Oh, right.
Contributes to algal blooms and dead zones in waterways. The EnviroPig offered a potential solution,
Okay.
but it faced strong public opposition and was never commercialized.
Really? So public perception can be a major hurdle for these biotechnologies,
Absolutely.
even if they offer environmental benefits. Interesting. What about Cosmo the bull?
Cosmo.
Yeah, I remember reading about him. Wasn't he genetically engineered to produce more male offspring?
Yes. Cosmo is a fascinating example of how gene editing can be used to boost efficiency in animal agriculture.
Right.
Male cattle grow faster and larger than females. So a bull that sires predominantly male offspring is highly desirable from a production standpoint.
Yeah, from a business perspective, it makes perfect sense. But it also raises these ethical questions about manipulating the sex ratio of animal populations.
Definitely, it's interfering with natural processes.
Where does that lead?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some critics argue that this type of genetic manipulation is taking us down a slippery slope,
Okay.
where animals are increasingly seen as mere commodities to be engineered and exploited for human benefit.
Right, right.
They worry about the implications for animal welfare and the long-term health of livestock populations.
It's a lot to think about.
It is.
And then there's the whole climate change issue.
Yeah, forget about that.
Our sources mention that researchers are exploring ways to use gene editing to create, like, heat-resistant cattle.
Yeah, as global temperatures rise,
Yeah.
livestock are increasingly susceptible to heat stress.
Oh, right, which impacts their health, productivity, everything.
Everything. So scientists are looking for ways to make them more tolerant of those higher temperatures.
So it's a necessary adaptation in a warming world, but isn't that just a Band-Aid solution? Shouldn't we be addressing the, like, root causes of climate change
That's a really important point.
rather than just trying to, like, engineer our way out of it?
Some would say that focusing on technological fixes like this distracts from the need to address those underlying causes.
Yeah.
Our reliance on fossil fuels, unsustainable agricultural practices, they worry we're putting too much faith in technology to solve problems that require fundamental societal shifts.
Right.
And economic shifts.
Yeah, it's a complex issue with no easy answers.
Definitely not.
But one thing is clear. Biotechnology is rapidly transforming the landscape of animal agriculture.
It's changing the game entirely.
Yeah. And it's presenting us with both incredible opportunities and some profound ethical challenges.
The double-edged sword.
The double-edged sword. So we've explored gene editing, but our sources suggest there are even more mind-bending biotechnologies on the horizon.
Oh, yeah. We're just getting started.
You're talking about, what was it, xenotransplantation?
Xenotransplantation.
The idea of using animal organs for human transplants.
Exactly.
And the even more futuristic concept of growing human organs inside animals.
It sounds like science fiction, but it's closer than you might think.
So animals as organ factories, growing human organs inside pigs.
Or monkeys.
Monkeys. Wow. This deep dive is really taking us into some uncharted waters here. Ethically, I mean.
No doubt about it.
Okay, let's unpack these technologies and really grapple with those complex ethical dilemmas they pose. But before we do that, there's one more potential solution you mentioned that I want to touch on.
Okay, what's that?
Cellular agriculture.
Ah, yes.
This is the idea of creating animal products without the animals.
Farming without the farm.
Right. Hold on. You're telling me we can make meat without animals?
That's the idea. It's still early days, but
Okay.
companies are already developing lab-grown meat, poultry, seafood.
Really?
They start with a small sample of animal cells. Then they nurture them in this nutrient-rich environment, allowing them to multiply and differentiate into the various cell types that make up muscle, fat, and connective tissue.
So they're essentially replicating the process of animal growth, but in a controlled laboratory setting.
Exactly. And the potential benefits are huge.
Okay, like what?
I mean, think about it. Lab-grown meat could eliminate the need for factory farming altogether, reduce
Wow.
animal suffering, reduce environmental impact,
Right.
and reduce the risk of foodborne illnesses.
So many pluses.
Yeah.
Honestly, it sounds almost too good to be true. What are the, challenges then?
Well, cost is a big one. Currently, producing lab-grown meat is significantly more expensive than conventional meat production.
Yeah, I can see that.
But as the technology advances and scales up, costs are expected to come down.
Right.
Another challenge is replicating that complex taste and texture of conventional meat.
Oh, yeah.
Early tastings have been promising, but there's still work to be done to create products that are truly indistinguishable from the real deal.
Sure. It's a fascinating development.
It really is.
And it'll be interesting to see how it plays out in the coming years. But let's get back to those mind-blowing biotechnologies you mentioned earlier.
Xenotransplantation.
Yeah, xenotransplantation.
Growing human organs inside animals.
Right. Those are some pretty heavy topics.
To say the least.
I think we need a little more time to really delve into those.
Agreed.
We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
From the farm to the lab, from the past to the future.
From ancient history to mind-boggling possibilities. But the journey's not over yet.
We've only just scratched the surface.
Exactly. So we'll be back to explore those more futuristic and ethically challenging topics in our next installment.
Stay tuned, folks. It's only going to get more interesting from here.
The future of animal agriculture, and maybe even the future of humanity, it all kind of hangs in the balance, doesn't it?
It does. And it's up to us to decide what that future looks like.
We'll pick up this fascinating conversation in part 2 of our deep dive. Welcome back to our deep dive into the future of animal agriculture. So before we went on to other topics, we were talking about some pretty sci-fi stuff using animals as organ donors for humans.
It's called xenotransplantation. And it's not as far-fetched as it sounds. Scientists are already making some significant strides in genetically modifying pig organs to make them more compatible with the human immune system.
Okay, so walk me through this. How do they actually modify pig organs for human use?
Imagine trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Okay.
That's essentially what happens when you transplant an organ from one species to another. The recipient's immune system, it recognizes the organ as foreign and attacks it. So scientists are using gene editing techniques like CRISPR to modify pig genes. Essentially, you're rounding off those genetic corners that trigger the human immune response.
So they're making pig organs less piggy and more human-like at a genetic level. That's wild.
Yeah.
Have there been any actual transplants using these modified organs?
Yes, there have been a handful of groundbreaking cases. Surgeons have transplanted genetically modified pig kidneys and hearts into human patients.
Wow.
Some of those early attempts were relatively short-lived, but there have been instances where pig organs function successfully for weeks or even months.
That's incredible. It offers so much hope for people on organ transplant waiting lists.
It really does.
But I imagine there are still some pretty significant challenges to overcome, right?
Absolutely. One major hurdle is the risk of transmitting animal viruses to humans.
Right.
Remember that pig heart transplant we mentioned earlier?
Yeah.
Sadly, the patient passed away. And it's complex, but there's evidence suggesting a pig virus that scientists thought they'd eliminated might have played a role.
That's a stark reminder that we're dealing with a new frontier here, and there are inherent risks involved.
Definitely. We need to proceed cautiously and learn from these early cases. Like any emerging technology, the key is to carefully weigh the potential benefits against the risks and continue researching ways to make xenotransplantation safer and more effective.
Okay, so xenotransplantation is already happening, but our sources suggest there's an even more futuristic approach on the horizon. Growing human organs inside animals.
Yeah, it's definitely pushing the boundaries.
You mentioned something called blastocyst complementation.
Right. This technique involves injecting human stem cells into an animal embryo that has been genetically modified to prevent it from developing certain organs. The human stem cells then fill the void and grow into the desired organ.
So it's like using the animal as a living incubator to grow a human organ. I can't decide if that's brilliant or bizarre.
It's a little bit of both, honestly.
Can you give me like an analogy to help me wrap my head around this?
Sure. Think of it like building a house.
Okay.
The animal embryo provides the foundation, but it's missing a specific room, let's say a kidney. We introduce human stem cells, which are like the building blocks, and they grow to form that missing room, a really functional human kidney within the animal.
That's incredible. Have scientists actually been able to grow human organs inside animals using this technique?
We're not quite there yet with human organs,
Okay.
but researchers have successfully grown rat organs inside mice and vice versa.
Oh, wow.
So it's proof of concept that shows this technology has real potential.
So it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility to, like, grow a human organ inside a pig.
Or monkey, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the long-term goal.
Right.
But there are still many scientific and ethical hurdles to overcome.
Right.
We need to ensure that organs are safe and functional, and we need to have a deep societal conversation about the ethical implications of creating creatures that are, part human, part animal.
I can only imagine those ethical complexities. But the potential benefits are hard to ignore. I mean, imagine a world where we could grow customized organs for anyone who needs them, eliminating the need for organ donors and the risk of rejection.
It's a compelling vision, a future where people no longer die waiting for a life-saving transplant.
Yeah.
But as with any powerful technology, we need to tread carefully and consider the long-term consequences.
You're right. It's not just about scientific progress. It's about our values and how we choose to shape the future.
Right.
It's a lot to process.
It is.
But before we get too deep into the ethics of it all, there's one more topic I want to touch on that you mentioned earlier, cellular agriculture.
Yes. The idea of creating animal products without the animals. It's a revolutionary concept with the potential to disrupt the entire agricultural industry as we know it.
Okay, remind me how this works again. We're talking about growing meat in a lab, right?
Exactly. Instead of raising and slaughtering animals, scientists take a small sample of animal cells, say from a cow or a chicken, and cultivate them in a nutrient-rich environment.
Okay.
These cells multiply and differentiate, forming muscle tissue, fat, everything else that makes up meat.
So they're essentially creating meat from scratch.
In a sense, yes. It's like growing a plant, but instead of seeds, we're using animal cells.
Okay, this is blowing my mind. But I have to ask, does lab-grown meat actually taste like real meat?
That's the million-dollar question, and the answer is increasingly yes.
Really?
Early versions had texture and flavor issues,
Yeah.
but companies have made significant strides in replicating the taste and texture of conventional meat.
Okay.
Blind taste tests are showing that many people can't tell the difference.
Wow, that's impressive.
Pretty remarkable.
What are the advantages of producing meat this way?
Well, for starters, it could dramatically reduce animal suffering.
Okay.
No more factory farms, no more cramped and unsanitary conditions, no more inhumane slaughter practices.
That's a huge ethical win. What about the environmental impact?
The potential benefits there are enormous. Studies suggest that lab-grown meat could require significantly less land, water, and energy compared to conventional meat production. It could also dramatically reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
So we're talking about a potentially more sustainable and ethical way to produce meat.
Exactly. Of course, there are still challenges to overcome. Scaling up production to meet global demand is a major hurdle, and the cost of lab-grown meat is still significantly higher than conventional meat.
Right, I imagine those juicy lab-grown steaks are going to cost a pretty penny for now. But if the price comes down, this could be a game changer.
Absolutely.
It's also fascinating and a little overwhelming, to be honest. We've covered so much ground in this deep dive, from ancient farming practices to the mind-boggling possibilities of gene editing, xenotransplantation, and now cellular agriculture. It feels like we're on the cusp of a revolution in how we interact with the animal world.
We are. The choices we make in the coming years will have profound implications for the future of food, medicine, and our relationship with other species. And speaking of choices, there's one more profound question we need to grapple with.
Okay.
A question raised by many of our sources. What if we applied these powerful biotechnologies to humans? What if, instead of just modifying animals, we started modifying ourselves?
Whoa. Now that's a whole other conversation. We've already talked about the ethical complexities of gene editing in animals, but applying those same techniques to humans, that opens up a Pandora's box of ethical dilemmas.
It does. But it's a conversation we can't shy away from. The technology is advancing rapidly. We need to be prepared to address the ethical and societal implications.
You're right. This isn't just a matter for scientists to decide. It's something we all need to be thinking about and discussing. This deep dive has taken us from the farm to the lab, from the past to the future.
Quite a journey.
And now it's pushing us to confront some pretty fundamental questions about what it means to be human.
And what kind of future we want to create.
It's been quite a journey, and we're not done yet. Join us for the final part of our deep dive as we delve into the ethical considerations of human gene editing and explore what the future might hold for our species. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been on quite a journey, exploring the evolution of animal agriculture.
It's been a wild ride. From those classic images of, cows in fields to the mind-blowing world of biotechnology. It's clear this field is anything but simple.
Yeah, it's been eye-opening for sure. One thing that's really stuck with me is how our actions, even seemingly small ones, can have this huge impact, It's like that whale poop example. Who would have thought something like that could be so crucial for a whole ecosystem?
It's a powerful reminder that everything's connected and that we need to consider those ripple effects of our choices, especially as we delve into these uncharted technological waters.
Right. We've talked about the potential of gene editing to create disease-resistant livestock.
Improve efficiency.
Even maybe make animals more adaptable to a changing climate.
Right, all these possibilities.
But while those possibilities are exciting, we also have to acknowledge those ethical questions they raise.
Yeah, definitely.
Where do we draw the line when it comes to manipulating nature?
That's the big question.
What are the potential unintended consequences? Both for the animals and for ecosystems.
Right. For everything, really.
It's a delicate balance, I think.
It is.
And we saw with the Enviropic example, even when a technology offers environmental benefits, public perception, that can be a major hurdle.
Huge hurdle.
But this is where it gets even more complicated, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Our sources are pushing us to consider a question that's almost straight out of science fiction.
Okay. What if we apply these same biotechnologies to humans?
That's the one. What if, instead of just modifying animals, we started modifying ourselves? I mean, it feels like we crossed a line just talking about modifying animal genes.
Sure.
But editing our own DNA.
That's a whole other level.
It is. It's a whole other level of ethical complexity. And it's not just a hypothetical scenario anymore.
Right.
I mean, we've already seen the first gene-edited babies born in China, which was a controversial case that, sparked a lot of international debate.
It was huge. A real turning point.
Right. I remember that. It felt like a watershed moment almost, like a glimpse into this future where parents might be able to choose their children's traits.
Designer babies, it's been the stuff of science fiction for so long.
And now it's becoming a reality. And it raises so many questions like, what if we could eliminate genetic diseases?
Right. But then what?
What if we could enhance intelligence, Or athletic ability? I mean, where does it end?
Those are questions that society needs to grapple with, and soon.
Yeah.
The technology is advancing so fast, we need to establish some clear ethical guidelines and regulations.
Right.
Before we find ourselves in a situation where those choices are being made without careful consideration.
It's almost overwhelming to think about, honestly.
It is a lot.
On one hand, the potential to alleviate suffering and improve human lives, it's incredible. But on the other hand, the potential for misuse.
Right.
For creating a society where people are valued based on their genetic makeup, it's terrifying.
It's a very real concern.
It's a classic double-edged sword, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
And it really highlights the need for a real robust public conversation about the ethics, the social and philosophical implications of human gene editing. This isn't just a matter for scientists to decide. It's something we all need to be thinking about.
Exactly. Everyone needs a seat at the table.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, cellular agriculture.
Okay.
If we can create meat without animals, could that potentially alleviate some of these ethical concerns, do you think?
It's definitely a possibility. Mm-hmm. If we can produce meat in a lab, indistinguishable from the real thing.
Yeah.
It could address many of the ethical and environmental issues associated with conventional animal agriculture.
No more factory farms, no more slaughtering animals, no more concerns about animal welfare or, the environmental impact of livestock production. It sounds almost utopian.
It does, doesn't it?
But even if cellular agriculture lives up to its promise, it doesn't completely erase the ethical dilemmas we've been discussing, does it?
That's right. It might shift the conversation,
Yeah.
but it doesn't make those questions disappear entirely.
Right. Ultimately, we still have to grapple with that that fundamental question of our relationship with the natural world.
Yeah.
And the limits of our technological interventions.
How far is too far?
Exactly. Whether it's gene editing, cellular agriculture, or any other emerging technology, we need to approach these innovations with, I think, with a sense of humility, caution, and a deep respect for the interconnectedness of life.
Well said. It's been quite a journey, this deep dive. From ancient farming practices to the mind-boggling possibilities of biotechnology. It's a complex and rapidly evolving landscape. And the choices we make today will have a profound impact on the future.
It's been an incredible journey, and I hope our listeners are feeling as inspired and challenged by these ideas as I am. We've explored the science, we've grappled with the ethics, but ultimately the future is up to all of us to shape. So stay curious, stay informed, stay engaged. The conversation about the future of animal agriculture and indeed the future of humanity, it's
just beginning.
just beginning.